If Steph Curry beats LeBron in this series, and dare I say, wins his 5th NBA championship, we might have to remove LeBron James off of Mount Rushmore and put Steph Curry on it.
You went full retard, man. Never go full retard.
When it comes to LeBron James on this channel, 95% of the time we're debating him versus Michael Jordan. And rightfully so, as both Jordan and LeBron are in the top tier of the greatest players in NBA history. But one debate I never thought I'd see as a serious debate is LeBron versus Curry when it comes to all-time rankings. And look, to clarify, I'm not a LeBron fan, a Lakers fan, even a Cavs or Heat fan. And still I can recognize that debate is flat out dumb. No slight to Steph Curry, he's debatably a top 10 player, but for LeBron, he's in that top 3 upper echelon of the GOATs in NBA history. And looking back on both their careers, really for all the 2010s, even the early 2020s, most people said LeBron James was always better than Steph. And it wasn't until he was 37, 38 that Steph finally squeaked by and was the better overall player. And that just goes to show you guys how recency bias can affect people in these debates. And for someone like Stephen A. Smith, he is undoubtedly a prisoner of the moment. As looking at LeBron versus Steph, head-to-head in the playoffs, LeBron was always better and always dominated when he played him. In 2015, he averaged 36, 13, and 9, carried his Cavs team, and won 2 games off the Warriors. 2016, averaged 30, 11, and 9, and won the title. 2017, averaged a 34-point triple-double and gave the Warriors their 1 loss of the entire playoffs. And then in 2018, averaged 34, 10, and 9 with an awful supporting cast. Looking at LeBron versus Steph in the NBA Finals, not once can you say Steph Curry outplayed LeBron. I think every NBA fan, including myself, with an IQ above a grapefruit can realize LeBron in this series was the better overall player, despite Steph's team winning more often. And even going one step further, to nail it home again, LeBron versus Steph head-to-head in the playoffs. LeBron averaged 32, 11, and 9, averaged more points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks with less turnovers.
How can Steph Curry still surpass LeBron James on the list of the greatest players of all time?
Well, to me, first of all, when I think about the greatest player of all time, obviously I think about Michael Jordan. I put LeBron James at number 2. But what I would make an argument to counter that point and to accentuate my point is that the best player isn't necessarily on the Mount Rushmore. We've talked about Wilt Chamberlain being the best. Nobody's put him ahead of Russell. Why? Because he's got 2 rings and Russell has 11. By the way, 2 as a player coach. So we take that into consideration as well. We've lamented or debated whether or not Steph Curry should be perceived as the greatest point guard of all time. But we know that Magic Johnson was a 5-time champion, but Magic Johnson could never shoot like that brother could shoot.
So stopping Stephen A. Smith right there, his points were pretty awful. And that analogy of comparing Wilt and Russell to Curry and LeBron is just so off and so disingenuous. As looking at Wilt and Russell, Chamberlain only had 2 titles, compared to Russell, who had 11. That gap in accolades is 10 times bigger than the gap in accolades between Curry and LeBron. As LeBron, unlike Wilt Chamberlain, compared to Steph Curry, was the better player as was the greater player. As compared to Steph, he has more MVPs, Finals MVPs, All-NBA teams, All-Defensive teams, and All-Star games. And when it comes to championships, unlike Wilt, he is tied with Steph at 4 rings. Trying to imply Steph versus LeBron is like Russell versus Wilt is an awful debate that is not grounded in reality. And look, don't get me wrong, championships and winning always matter. And for me personally, I value them heavily in all-time rankings. But let's get real. If a player in a series averages 40 and loses to a guy who averages 12 points, who was the better player and who benefited from a great team? Either Stephen A. Smith is a complete idiot or being very disingenuous, or to tell you the truth, maybe a little bit of both.
Then we look at him against LeBron. Is he a better all-around player than LeBron? Of course not. We know that. Does he have? When you think about LeBron and the incredible impact that he has, nobody's going to debate that. But Steph would have 5 titles. 3 of them is beating LeBron, obviously, in the championship round. When you take that into consideration, along with the fact that LeBron joined D-Wade, okay? Remember, Kevin Durant joined Steph Curry, went the other way around. LeBron joined D-Wade. And what has Kevin Durant done before and after Steph Curry? We take all of those things into consideration. It's not about who's the better player. It's about who has the better resume.
Now, Stephen A. Smith in this clip actually made some valid points, talking about Steph Curry winning championships minus Kevin Durant and LeBron going to South Beach to team up with D-Wade. Those points are valid for an all-time debate. But for this topic and this debate, LeBron versus Curry, it changes absolutely nothing. And Stephen A. in his own words says LeBron is the better player and the better all-around player. But at the very end, doubles down saying resume can make you a better player all time. A pretty simplistic view of things, because anyone, your grandma, your 5-year-old toddler, can go on Basketball Reference, look at accolades, and rank players accordingly. For me and many people, we look at accolades, championships, and all that. We also factor in a player's overall ability and how good they were as an individual. Looking at championships purely, or purely skill, overall talent, is an inaccurate way of ranking players, as what you do is combine all the factors to go into your rankings in your top 10. And one thing I do find pretty baffling is head-to-head matchups all of a sudden mattering so much in these debates. And why I find this pretty stupid is because looking at Michael Jordan, who I consider the GOAT, him versus Larry Bird in the playoffs in 86 and 87 was swept twice and never won a game versus Celtics. Does that make Larry Bird a top 5, top 3, even the greatest player in NBA history for beating Jordan? No, because we know the context that Jordan was a young player in the league and Larry Bird had a super team. Even going one step further, looking at Moses Malone, in his career not once did he lose a playoff series to Kareem, and in fact went 6-1 versus him in overall games. In those games, averaged more points, rebounds, steals, and shot better from the field. Does that make Moses Malone the greatest center in NBA history? Obviously not. That's why head-to-head matchups, while fun to watch, they don't factor in to all-time rankings that much.
So your point is very well taken. It's a great conversation to kick off.
It is a great conversation. And to do this comparison, you got to be sophisticated enough to respect and compare errors.
Amen.
And I agree with you, Wilbon. There's certain greatness and achievements that a few players have accomplished to me that probably will never be surpassed. Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell, Magic Johnson. They're in a league of their own, in my opinion, because of the accomplishments, because of the rings, because of the greatness, because of the dominance.
So, stopping that clip right there once again, I do want to reiterate, I am not a LeBron James fan, I'm not getting paid from Clutch Sports, and I am not getting Mountain Dew from Shannon Sharp. With that in mind, I don't know how any credible NBA analyst can say LeBron James at this point in 2023 is not at least a top 4 player in NBA history. And listen to Jalen Rose, he had Jordan, Kareem, Russell, and Magic in no order. Look, all those players are all-time great players. And actually, I have 3 of those guys in my top 5 on my own personal list. But looking at LeBron James, his entire body of work over 20 years, the peak, the longevity, the consistency, there is no way this guy is not a top 5 player of all time. As early on, he won 4 MVPs in 5 years, had the 48-point game versus Detroit where he went off in the fourth quarter. Down in Miami, he had an insane two-way peak, won back-to-back titles. In 2016 with Cleveland, you could very easily argue he has the best championship ring in NBA history, beating the Golden State Warriors, coming back from 3-1, averaging 30 points, the block. That series was all-time great. Even in 2018, at age 34, he was putting up 34, 8-8, had 2-game winners in the playoffs, beat Toronto, who nearly won 60 games, and the Eastern Conference Finals, came back from 3-2 versus the Celtics. Even looking 2 years later in Los Angeles, as a Laker, he led the NBA in assists and went 16-5 en route to his 4th MVP in the NBA Finals on his 3rd different team. And finally, the cherry on top has been the NBA's all-time leading scorer and passing Kareem. I don't really know what you can say about LeBron James that hasn't already been said. And from an all-time standing, I haven't heard any argument for him not being at least top 3. So that right there is the end of the video, and once again, the LeBron vs. Curry debate, while fun, is not a real debate, as LeBron all time is the much greater player, and even today isn't that much worse than Steph Curry. So, as always, thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.